No, good. Tim's done his job. Set the recording going.
Well, you can relax. You're not totally on your own then, Doug.
Not
Done
quite.
and dusted now, Doug.
That's it. Yeah, you can sit back and
Sign
relax
off.
now. You can now. Yeah.
Okay, we'll give them another minute. Those people caught in the traffic queue somewhere. Just as the bus moves away from the bus stop, somebody else joins. No, they don't. Yep, they do. David.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Just give it a little. We did say we'd start at 32, so that is it. It's 32. Oh, here comes somebody else. The bus is now moving away from the bus stop. Okay. When was the last time you went on a bus and you waited in the pouring rain to catch a bus? Well, welcome to the 33rd A Principal Designers Working Group. Good afternoon. Thank you for those of you who joined us and those people who are presenting. Just give you a quick safety moment. I appreciate this event is under investigation, so and somebody on the call is probably involved in that investigation. But during the heavy rain that we've had recently and flooding on roads, one of our traffic officers went to the rescue of two cars that had aquaplaned, and whilst he sort of parked up and got himself at the side of the road, another car started aquaplaning. It was a Tesla. And those of you who drive electric cars will understand that the braking system on electric cars is somewhat different. And an HGV swerved to avoid that vehicle, the electric vehicle, and unfortunately it fell over and crushed one of the cars that had previously jackknifed, squashing two people. I can't overemphasize the fact, that people do need to moderate their speed in adverse weather. Make sure their lights are on properly, not just on automatic lights. Put them on, full beam, except not full beam, proper headlights and rear lights on as well, and drive in the weather conditions. It's horrifying. Top of where my lane meets the main road, we have a continual problem with a farmer arguing with the council about digging out a ditch. The other day they had to pull a car out of the hedgerow that had aquaplaned on this section of road. And now the council are digging the ditch out, and the farmer's now got the problem that he's got a nice big hole in his fence or his hedgerow. So these things do happen, they're real. Do pass that message on to everybody, please. Just slow down and think about what you're doing. Drains can cope with a certain amount of water, but we do seem to have a lot of flooding at the moment. Okay, Martin, the chair is yours. The microphone is all yours, sir.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay. Okay, you can go past on to the next slide. So I'm presenting on designing for maintenance, probably because I work in maintenance. So just brief description of where I work. So I work in area 14 and have done for 20 years, I think it is. In various guises. My background is design, and then moved into maintenance in 2003 under A1 Plus, and now into CHC, which is a 50/50 JV of Jacobs and Costain. It's part of a community though. All the areas are part of communities. So this one's part of the Yorkshire North East Collaborative Community, 35 different companies, all maintaining that road network, either in area 14 or area 12, and of which the Social Value Group won the Team of the Year last couple of weeks ago at the Highways UK Award, which part of, which is great. I've just put a few statistics on here because we're going to need those for the next few slides. So we managed 1,100 kilometres of verges, 419 kilometres of VRS safety barrier, so that's still safety barrier, and 110 kilometres of motorway. Most of the network north of Newcastle, which is about the halfway point on that screen, is a single carriageway with bits of dual carriageway in between, which takes you all the way up to Scotland. So it's quite a diverse network, some motorway, some dual carriageway, some with meter strips, and a chunk with single carriageway. Okay, so if you go on to the next one. My slides are a bit, what do you call it? Heavy, I suppose. So I've tried to make this specific to about 3 different types of design for maintenance issues that we're currently experiencing, and I'm looking at it from different angles. So this one's looking at verges and especially grass. I would say that grass is I mean, most designers probably wouldn't even consider that grass is something that you design, but it's what I call the bane of my life at the moment, because of halves. So in order to maintain the verges, you have to cut the grass, and you cut the grass to maintain the VRSs so you can actually inspect them. There's a maintenance regime in place to cut the grass. I've put up there, it's out of GM 701, which is part of the DMRB. That's shown 3 times per year for some sections. It actually can go up to 8 times a year in other sections. So having to cut the grass all the time is a bit of a pain. And then you look at how the verges are actually set up. So to cut, I've shown a couple of pictures there. We've got the central reserve, and we've got a gantry with a safety barrier in front. All that grass has to be cut. Where you've got a nice long strip behind it, you can get a mower on it, or what we call a mulcher. That operates at, that's got a trigger time of 1.5 hours. So you'd need to replace your person driving it every 1.5 hours to actually use it. Otherwise, you're moving into hand-arm vibration issues. Other issues with mowing the grass are that you get stones being flung out, and those go flying in all directions, and can go into the roads, as we've had recently. We have flying objects, not just from the mower, but also by strimmers. So to mow the central reserve, you use a strimmer to mow around the posts. It's not the only way of doing it. You can use, there is some equipment out there that is automated. You can either use robotics, but it all comes down to money eventually as to what you actually use. So I brought it into here because this is designing for maintenance. So is there a better way of designing it? And so at the bottom there, I've added in if we used yellow wattle instead of grass, it will kill the grass. Means we don't have to mow it. So therefore, design out maintenance. And if you change the grass to low growing, again, we don't have to mow it. So I'm asking for designers to start thinking about the grass in a better way. We can. We've also got PAS 2080, 2023, which is carbon management framework and reducing carbon. All designers should be designing for that. If you design out the maintenance requirements, it means we don't have the TM, reduce the fuel, and we don't have the vehicles out there. So you can actually reduce your carbon impact as well. So if you can go on to the next slide. If anyone wants to chip in with any questions or anything, please do. These are just things that we've been picking up in the design in the maintenance side that could be designed slightly differently. So we've got technology assets on our network. This came through recently as a design improvement. They'd improved the electrical cabinets, and then were putting in a little footpath which went down actually onto the edge of onto the actual edge of the road. It came across my eyes and said, you know, is there anything? Is this okay? And I said, well, not really, because there's nowhere to park. If we wanted to maintain those electrical cabinets, we would have to park on the road, which then means traffic management. So that's extra risk to the traffic management team, extra risk to our guys who enter the traffic management, and of course carbon. It's an increase in carbon usage, so not the best of solutions. Suggested that they put a hard standing on the verge. What they came up with instead, which was quite a good idea, was use the hard standing that was already under the underbridge, which is on the top left-hand corner, which then identifies another design for maintenance issue, is that to maintain the technology assets, you have to have dry weather. You can't maintain them in wet weather because the electricity and water don't mix. So could the electrical cabinets have been sited underneath the bridge where it's dry, and therefore reduce the need for any footpaths as well? So it's another way of looking at design. I think we just need to be looking at things slightly differently, and not site them in the same places all the time. We go on to the next one, and this is about access ability. Again, sort of tied into TM. We've got a slip road where it's only a single carriageway. In order to access the technology assets on the verge, you've got to close the road, and needs TM to close the road. If it had been a double-laned road, or one with the hard shoulder on it, you could reduce the road width and be able to maintain with reasonable accessibility. Although you could do with a hard standing on the verge, so we can get a vehicle off and park up safely, and then you wouldn't need NTM at all. The gantry in the middle there requires, because it's been designed so that it covers a lane and a half, you now need a lane closure that will go across both the hard shoulder and the near side lane closure, or sorry, the lane one, in order to maintain the gantry and get out to the far end of it. So it's looking at how we actually maintain gantries and whether you need the full width. And the bridge has got a lamp post on the opposite side of the VRS, which you now need a mute to access from underneath to access it. So, and then the fence, the wooden fence at the top, well, that's we've got that under a safety shirt at the moment, where that should actually be a steel barrier rather than a wooden fence, because it's at the top of a vertical face. So it's all aspects that should be looked at from a design perspective and designed slightly differently to maintain it in a better way. That's the end of my presentation, I'm afraid. Has anyone got any questions?
So, Martin, you are leading a working group that's pulling this together, aren't you?
Yes.
So, do you need more support from others? And my second part of the question is, how are you currently sharing these so that people can access them to use them as lunch and learn, challenge existing design, share with new designers coming into the business, graduates, etc.?
This is the first time I've done this, so this is one presentation that you can share. That's one way of doing it. Some of these issues that have been picked up as safety shares anyway, and are available on the safety share design lessons learned on the Safety Hub site. Regarding the working group, that's just been set up. So yeah, that there is a call out now underneath this forum as to whether there's anyone that wants to be involved in that. We have got a design for maintenance issue that's come through on the structures side that Jim Gallagher raised under the last safety share meeting. So we'll be picking that up and bringing it into here. But yeah, so if anyone's interested in being part of that group, can you put your names into the chat and we'll pick it up from there.
Mark's got his hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Martin whether that group is also going to look at designing for inspection, or whether potentially that needs to be a separate group in terms of things like inspecting geotechnical assets, which is often challenging, steep slopes, environmental barriers, etc., which stop you getting to what you need to see. So is that going to be sort of tied into what your group is looking at, or does that need to be a sort of a separate?
Oh, well, yeah, so maintenance, although what CHC does is M&R type maintenance work, it's the maintenance community that I'm tied into is really what A1 Plus did, which covers inspection of the asset and operation of the asset as well. And not just M&R minor maintenance, it probably involved a little bit more major maintenance as well. Widenings and inspections, yes, but yeah, pick up the same thing rather than doing
it'll be really
else.
useful to get some guidance on the sorts of things that designers should be considering for earthworks inspections.
Yeah.
Okay. And Nick's put a comment Nick Paul's put a comment in the chat. Syria are about to redo the bridge detailing guide with some consultants as part of the delivery group. Do we know who they are, Nick?
I do. I just can't think of them straight away. Eusens and somebody else. I can't think.
Well, Jim spoke then, did he or not?
Yeah, I'm on the review team for that, Richard. So if you got sort of any sort of input or detail, you can come through me if you want.
Okay, brilliant.
A good place to feed it in, and that's why I was just wondering. You told us the problems. I just wondered, were there any recommended solutions? Because the lighting column solution, while it's not good, what's the actual recommended solution? Because in the end, you need to protect it. Yeah.
Yes, I don't have the solution for that one.
So that's what I love the lessons learned, but they need to be with a
solution.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're just in the end it ends up just being an observation that will just sit there and won't actually be something tangible that we can input somewhere. It has to go somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, and also, whilst the slides are powerful, they do actually need to have a bit more detail on them, because it's nice to see the spar lorry running beneath the wooden fence, but to somebody, if they're trying to explain that to a graduate or something, they need to have a bit more context. So maybe offline, Martin, we can talk, Doug and I, about how we can sort of link in your case studies with the lessons learned as well.
Yes,
but it's great.
Yes.
It's great just stimulating conversation on such a topic. Yeah.
And turn them into, what is it, how to. This is how not to, but we need to turn it into, this is what we should be doing.
Yeah, so that's why I said some of these have been already done that with the safety shares. But yeah.
No, brilliant. Thank you. Any other questions for Martin? Nick Hearn.
Hi, sorry, sir.
The one thing I did, okay.
So Nick,
I was going to ask, the street lighting, was there a need for it?
I don't know. I'm not the designer of or the whoever designed the brief for it.
Yeah, but that's the ultimate principle, isn't it, Nick? And build nothing in the first place.
Yeah.
Less to maintain.
Yes.
Yeah. So my background is utilities. So I sit in the National Highways Utilities team. So I was invited to this meeting through the program manager who looks after utilities in National Highways. So it's my first time on this call, so I do apologise for being late. So I was just wondering, in principles, how have we got utilities on here? How do we maintain the utilities access and their third party rights that run up and down our verges and highways? Because that's always a stumbling block.
It is. It is. Maybe that's something that we can pick up at our next full meeting, Nick. This is just a sort of catch up because we overran out of time at our last face-to-face meeting.
Yeah, I've got an example of one around that, but I didn't bring it into because it came up in we've got a third party cabinet box which is at the bottom of a batter, and they've been looking at accessibility to it and who needs to actually provide that access. We've been called in because of the technology side, and the access at the moment is off the main carriageway, down the embankment, and across a small bit of verge. The cabinet itself is sitting on the boundary fence to a local road, local authority road, and I mean, I'll pull up the. I'll have to pull up the example and put it onto a safety share, because the obvious thing from a design perspective for myself was you'd have been better off simply identifying the parking areas being underneath the overbridge and accessing it from the local authority road rather than coming off the main carriageway. Just seeing crackers coming off the main carriageway because you're going to need TM to put to protect the workforce at the top. It's so it goes back to designing and designing it for the right reasons and designing for maintenance, which I think you've got to go back to the designers to keep on asking for the how you actually maintain it.
You're attracting more hands, more conversation, and we've got Tim's the next one.
Thank you very much. Quick one, just a general comment. We've picked up recently on a job we're TA on, post and rail fence, which you've got in a couple of photos there. I'm sure it's been mentioned recently that we shouldn't be using post and rail timber fences for edge protection. I'm sure Jim had something to say about it a few principals on the working groups ago, and it's whether it isn't allowed or whatever, and whether we should be bringing this up.
Yeah, I suppose I come in there. No, it's not. It should be a pedestrian guardrail. If you're working up there, it should be a pedestrian guardrail.
Sort of a key clamp.
Yeah. The reference CD 377. That's a vehicle restraint standard. But that if you've got people working up there, that a timber fence is just not good enough.
Okay.
Now the problem is that now it's been built that way under the M&R contracts. All they do is replace like for like. So unless the instruction goes back to the National Highways Maintenance team that they need to now replace that, they won't. They will replace it with the exact same fence as what you've currently got there. And so we're in the same situation every 5 to 10 years or however long a wooden fence lasts for.
Yeah, but it should be part of your risk management to sit and say this is not appropriate protection for someone working up there. Therefore, you've got to have something else as well. You either keep away from the fence by the exclusion zone, or you put something.
So under the M&R, we're under instruction from National Highways. Okay, all our work is under instruction, so we do what you say. So if you want us to change that, or you don't want us to mow up to the edge, that's what we work. It's under your instruction.
I'm not sort of arguing with you there, Martin, but all I'm saying is that you should flag up this as a risk. If they instruct you to do it, then that they're taking that risk on themselves, that they've instructed you to work on something that it should be protected better.
Yeah, that's what we did. Yeah, we flagged it up.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last question for Martin's from Daniel.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hassel is my first name, actually. Just a quick one on the utilities. What mechanism is there in place that we can hold down the utility companies from a design perspective when we are doing highway works or designing for new highway works, new build, or even maintenance? How can we further, have them in a position where they have to come to the table from the concept stages? Because they work under their own authority, they basically, I wouldn't use the word difficult, but challenging to get a hold of, to compound the design and button out all these issues. How can we best do that? Is there a mechanism? Is there a legal framework? Is there whatever?
So essentially, to answer your question, Hassel, it is Hassel, isn't it? Hassel, Daniel?
Yes, Hassel.
Yeah, Hassel. The mechanism is through the transactional process of the Appendix C in the Code of Practice. And we, through a transactional arrangement, write to them, tell them to respond. So C3, C4s, and then C6s to carry out the works. But there's a whole nine steps within this process. National Highways are looking at changing or introducing agreements where we are more collaborative, and we start that at the very, very beginning of our projects in stage one.
Yes.
And there are called options, consultations, or works agreements. We also have introduced project managers, work guidance, so that National Highways project managers are more informed and understand what it is that the utilities need. Getting the utility on board, they would always be on board because they've got to protect their network.
Yes.
That's their obligation to their paying customer. How that is done is up to them. We just need them on the table, at the table.
Yes.
And we need to be consulting with them. They're not contractors. They're not, there is no contractual mechanism. Under NERSWA, they actually contribute financially to our schemes. People recognise it as a discount, but under the sharing of cost is actually a contribution. So they contribute to the cost of our schemes, and it's a peer-to-peer relationship. So there's got to be more collaborative environments when we're having these discussions. And they do come to the table. And if they're not, please raise it with the National Highways Utilities team, and they will certainly encourage the utilities to turn up.
Okay, and you just in my head. So we got them to the table. We got them collaborating. But there's and I've experienced this just recently. There's still let me just to give a bit of context. Sorry, we're designing. They have their assets that they need to put on a new development that we're doing. They will just give us the standard, even though we're going to say, and we're saying, let's look at, for example, the maintenance issues as was raised earlier. Let's look at the carbon initiative. Let's look at how best we can optimize the design and integrate it within the overarching scheme. Some of them are adamant that, okay, we just, with the idea that we're just putting down our assets and wherever it goes, that's it, it's done, we paid for it, we contribute, let's go. That attitude also, I believe, needs to change. And you rightly said, the mechanism we can use is through you and the collaboration. Is there anything more that we can do at that point, or we just collaborate and see how best we can work it out.
From a regulatory point of view, no.
Right.
There is no stick, essentially. But we do have influence. We have meetings with DFT now, and there's a recognised history of challenges that are presented to these big transportation highway schemes, and the aim is to sort of like change the way we engage with utilities. But in terms of a regulatory stick, no, there's very little, which is why we have to really push a more collaborative environment. Just out of curiosity, at what stage are you doing these designs in? Is this a detailed design? So if it's PCF major projects, it'd be detailed design stage 4, stage 5?
The design fix D and E, yes. Stage 4 going to 5.
Okay.
Stage 6 will be to build. So yes.
So what about if we did this? Ask these questions earlier in stages, in concept, and have those discussions in concept, so that when they come to do their detailed design, they're already aware that this is what we're looking at as a big picture.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
I do appreciate that some utility companies don't always have the right attitude, and it may be some of their, certainly the comms companies, their designers are, not like some of ours.
Okay.
And they're certainly not digitally aware.
Hassel, maybe you'd like to take this offline. You got each other's contact details in the invite.
Yep, let's do
that.
that.
Because I'm conscious of time, because Doug's going to tell me off. Because thank you, Martin, because Doug's on next and gets quite precious about his 10 minutes.
Thank you, Richard, and good afternoon, everybody. Martin, if I could just ask if you wouldn't mind just going off camera, because my Teams is playing up. Sorry, and I don't need to freeze, because otherwise, right. I'll share my screen. So hopefully that will come through. So I'm going to give a quick update on the future of RTB 26 Safety by Design, alignment with the Supply Chain Safety Leadership Group significant risk exercise, improving design risk management, and looking how we can form a design risk management standardization task and finish group to look at those issues currently. So a quick recap on safety by design, as I say, subject to future review by Supply Chain Safety Leadership Group, and I must admit I'm not fully up to speed on the context of that, and we need more discussion with supply chain. So the RTB 26 was last updated in September 21, and Paul Brown has done a lot of great work there. I see Paul's on the call. I've tried to touch base with Paul in the week, but he's not been able to get in touch with him. So the key objectives, anyway, of RTB 26 to drive a safety by design mindset from the outset, to capture and share information throughout the project lifecycle, as set out in PAS 1192 Part 6. Look to promote off-site manufacture and assembly, so design for manufacture assembly, being hopefully the default construction assumption. To look to foster virtual rehearsals as business as usual, and then look at ensuing insights informing our design development. From all of that, we'd highlight that where we can't eliminate hazards, we will aim to reduce them or ultimately isolate them, following the principles of prevention. So all great stuff set out in Safety by Design. There've been a couple of sort of potential updates in sort of recent months in terms of discussions that have been going on at PD working group and etc. So just sort of flag up a couple of those. So on a couple of the RDP schemes, the TA working with the RDP, the DIP organisation, have identified a number of inconsistencies in the way hazard rating was being used in a construction and operational environment. So the DIP and the TA working closely together have promoted the development of a new 5x5 risk matrix, and this has been discussed. Some great work by Martin Partington and the Jacobs team. We've previously touched base on this a number of times at PD Working Group 32 in the summer, and at the recent Safety Hub on the 2nd November. I think that there's an aspiration all around for people to promote the 5x5 matrix as best practice, and I know it's currently being used by Jacobs. We use it at Arcadis. I understand Mott's are using it, and Volker Fitzpatrick, and hopefully in the January PD Working Group 34, Phil Gregson is going to be doing a presentation on the way that they are using the matrix, or a form of that matrix. I will provide some backup paperwork that Martin provided at his presentation at the Hub last week, which sets out the development of the development work that went into creating the matrix and different variations, etc. And also useful information. There is also has been a proposal also to update the Appendix 1 and 2, which is the Safety by Design plan. So there is a template which is now mandated in the supply quality plan, and that sets out the CDM delivery roles and responsibilities. And this was a recommendation that came out of the PD Working Group Eliminating Risk from the Outset Task and Finish Group back in 2020. And again, Paul has done some great work there in consultation with others to develop a template. And the aspiration was to get that into a version of, or an updated version of the RTB. And I've just, so there's the new matrix, the new design risk management matrix. So a lot of work's gone into that. As you can see, the banding, low, medium, high, and very high, improved descriptions in terms of severity, and also the scope for to demonstrate where the risk has been eliminated. So I won't go into any greater detail there, but so from a risk management perspective and objectives for the task and finish group, just sort of jotting down some thoughts here. So we've obviously sort of flagging up that there is a need for greater standardization. So if we're looking at construction, looking at ensuring designers identify and capture and mitigate both health hazards and safety hazards, because obviously health is extremely important here, and these issues need to be flagged up, and often health is forgotten in the process. We need to provide designers with a greater understanding of sort of likelihood and severity to drive that consistency. We need to ensure that we're considering buildability. We need to drive greater consistency of hazard rating for residual hazards, which we hand to the principal contractor. And we also need to ensure there's greater emphasis on the significant, unusual and difficult to manage hazards. We don't want to be inundated drawings, BIM model, etc., with thousands of hazards and lose those unusual, as it says there, difficult to manage. If a competent contractor understands the hazards, yet we as designers need to review those and try and minimise those, but we don't want those to cloud the bigger picture. And from an operational and maintenance perspective, we need to be looking to improve the consistency of those residual O&M hazards that are being handed back to the client and the maintainer ultimately. And then at end of life, from a demolition perspective, we also need to ensure that designers are considering those adverse effects at decommissioning stage. So moving on to the next slide. So I've just taken this. This is actually a RAG list that was generated by the Construction Industry Advisory Committee, CONIAC, back in 2015. I've abstracted those that are more highways related, but this is a well, it's a typical RAG list, and obviously there are similar amber and green lists that were provided. And I suppose the ask is, you know, in terms of how does this align with the aspirations of supply chain with their significant risk exercise? Can the CONIAC RAG list be updated? I'm sure that we as different organisations have got our own RAG lists, and I know various RAG lists have been published over the years. Can we pull those together to create a more unified set of guidance? And that as an example, oops, what's happened there? Right, on here there should be a slide which isn't very useful there. It should be a slide that's come from the BIM for Health and Safety people, which was identifying early development of the ISO 19650 Part 6, which is BIM info for whole life cycle management, and I'm not quite sure why that's not showing up there, which is a bit strange, but I will share that with the minutes. But what it presented was an idealized CDM based data flow through from early stages to concept design over to detailed design. So apologies for that. I'm not quite sure what's happened there, but here we go. Sorry, I didn't realize it was okay. So yeah, as you can see, so from client input, goes through the various stages into concept, into control points, and detailed design, and how residual risks should be managed through that process. I won't go into detail there, but this is part of the work that's coming out of the BIM for Health and Safety working group that HSE are promoting at the moment. So moving on, yes, there we go. So what are in terms of key objectives and tasks, things to consider? So what actions are required to align with the supply chain and the significant risk initiative? Can we update highways health and safety rag lists? What needs to happen to RTB 26 over the next 12 to 18 months? And I must admit, I'm not wholly clear on the aspirations from supply chain, as I said at the start, and how this is going to move forward, and particularly integrate with health as well as a future RTB. There's also quite a lot of work that's gone on in terms of Uniclass and the sort of what the implications for risk management there. This is something that HSE are aspiring to, and they've actually, I think just yesterday actually, the Uniclass risk classes have been published, and they can be found at the link there, so Uniclass nbs.com. So that sets out a standardized list of risks to help drive that consistency. So that's a great step forward that's been pushed by HSE, and I can share a link to that as well. There's also quite a lot of work, quite a bit of work that's going on sort of our sort of mega projects, so the A66 and LTC, where they're working effectively across portfolios of projects and schemes, and to drive consistency across those projects and schemes. So there's work that we can engage there, and there are obviously representatives from those schemes who are members of Prince Susanna Working Group. And then sort of moving on and thinking about digitalisation. So how can we support the improved use of digital systems to manage the hazards? And that's links into the use of safety base and GIS at handover, and how does that potentially link into that handover piece with National Highways in terms of their residual risk databases. So from a task and finish group, I thought the next steps really would be looking at obtaining expressions of interest from the group, so volunteers, setting up initial kickoff meeting, look to understand the aspirations of SCSLG and how we can work in alignment with that group, develop terms of reference, i.e. identify what the end goal is and agree deliverables and approximate timescales. So that was really all I had to say really in terms of the objectives, and I'll just stop sharing that. So if there's any sort of questions or comments. Okay, Liz, so you've got your hand up. Oh, you're on mute, Liz.
You're on mute, Liz.
There I go. My one comment is that I'm not sure how it translates into projects that are outside of major projects, if you see what I mean. And we all know there's not going to be there's not going to be any more major projects after these next couple of big ones have been done. So I'm not sure if we need to relook at it with the lens of renewals and how design for renewals across maybe how that might impact that raising the bar. And also just thinking about things like, and my experience is all major projects, but thinking about how we're using GIS platforms and how we will be doing that in Lower Thames Crossing. And for me, this is all standard business as usual. I get the feeling that none of this is standard business as usual for people involved with maintenance and renewals. And so how I feel like we've got one community of people that work with national highways that are up here and another set that are here. And it's sort of bridging that gap a little bit. And I don't know if we need to think about how we do that.
Well, I think that's great point, Liz. And yes, I mean, I was thinking about the whole of life design. So not yes, I mean, if we're moving from a major projects environment into more into an OD environment, and I see Marty's got his hand up, so maybe coming from the OD environment, you've got some thoughts on that?
Yeah, quite interesting actually, especially around that GIS. So I used to work for A1 Plus, which was a Mac environment, and GIS was embedded into that environment. It was a keystone. We needed it basically. Under the AD environment, though, that basically split up a Mac into its individual parts, and I believe that the GIS side is now starting to be developed in national highways, because you still need it. It's just identifying which of the partners has the best system, I suppose. It makes sense that national highways have it because all the assets are sitting on it, basically. But yes, you do need GIS, and you need access to the GIS, and you need it across all your supply chain that are needing access to those assets. Yeah,
agreed. And I think the skills gap comes when you look further down the supply chain, and there's a journey to go on there really for some people to use it and make the most of it, because it is a fantastic tool for everybody. It really is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just conscious of time and picking up some of the comments in chats. You've already touched on the fact that the RTB doesn't really translate into the brave new world. Neil's asked questions about the 5x5 matrix, making it standard. We don't normally mandate set things, but I know two of my colleagues, Nina and Katie Harmon, on the call, are currently reviewing the internal National Highways CDM process. So maybe they've got an opportunity to start embedding the 5x5 matrix into that, then it will cascade out to the supply chain. Paul's put in quite a long comment about scheme quality plans is very limited, you know, putting in the CDM design process in there. It will be articulated somewhere in the deliverables by engineering consultants. It's how it's implemented and also how it transfers across to the principal contractor. I'm conscious, Doug, that we have 10 minutes left.
Sure.
So which presentation are we sacrificing?
I think we'll be okay.
The last one?
No, I think we'll be okay, because I think the last one is relatively short. So
right, okay.
I'll hand over to Mark in a tick. If I just give me a second just to set things up.
Thank everybody for participation in this call, because it's late in the afternoon, and we're just trying to catch up on what we had to curtail at the previous meeting.
So are you happy to drive the slides, Doug?
I can do, yes. And
yeah, I was assuming you would. So
yeah, just bear with me a second. I will share now.
Yep, that's fine. Excuse me. Good afternoon, everyone. Yep, just to provide an update on where the health and safety file digital development has got to over the last few months. Next slide, please. So the last meeting was held some time ago, but that doesn't mean there hasn't been any activity. I've been talking to the OD community, principally David Renshaw, who I see isn't on the call, but that was really useful. So I've incorporated some of the feedback from him into the slides coming up. So next slide, please. So first of all, just to review progress on the various subtasks that we identified. So subtask 1, which was about establishing whether there were other National Highways working groups looking at health and safety file digitalisation. I think the feedback from Richard and Jason seems to be that no, there's no other group specifically looking at the digitalisation piece. So I think that one is effectively closed. Saskia did some great work on looking at what progress consultant organisations have already made in respect to health and safety file digitalisation. The outcome of that was quite interesting because it showed a broad spectrum of progress, some of which appeared to claim that health and safety files are being provided in digital form. Have to confess I'm a little bit skeptical because I've not seen any clear evidence of that. I think lots of consultants are pretty good at using digital tools during the design process and moving it into the construction process, but I've not yet seen any clear evidence that that migrates into across into the maintenance, the O&M community. So, but that was really good. And sadly, we've lost Saskia because she's left Arup, as some of you may know, and has moved to another organisation. So she's unlikely to be participating in PD working group going forward. But I certainly thank her for the work she's done. End user requirements. I took this action over from Andrew Finch, who left Jacobs a little while ago without any real handover. So I sort of started at square one on that. But I think the conclusion, and really picking up on the point that Liz made a few minutes ago, that there's a big incompatibility between major projects and the OD community, and the way that information is stored and managed during the pre-construction design and construction stages, and the way the end users, the O&M community, store, manage and communicate the information. There's a massive gulf there, and as we'll come on to in a minute, that's really one of the key challenges. We also looked at which of the various National Highways health and safety file content requirements could be presented in digital form, and I think we concluded there that actually there isn't really anything in CDM 2015 Appendix 4 and the additional National Highways requirements that isn't capable of being tagged to assets on a GIS platform. It's all perfectly technically feasible to do that. The next one was producing a draft process map. I've been trying to get hold of Dave Owens unsuccessfully, but I have started to draft out something myself on that, based on the work that Dave had done previously. Okay, next slide, please. And just to close out the last two subtasks, Rob Butcher, who I don't think is on the call, looked at what was in the National Highways digital delivery and digital roads documents, and I think concluded that there wasn't anything specific relating to this topic, but that they were sort of supportive, generally supportive in principle, but if not in detail. So I think that there isn't anything that we particularly need to align this with the digital delivery and digital roads documents. And lastly, the outputs and deliverables, which is really what I'm working on now. I'd like to wrap up this task and finish group by the end of this year. Next slide, please. So just to draw together some general conclusions. As I said earlier, that design organisations are already pretty good at adopting and utilising GIS-based tools and platforms for storing and communicating health and safety information, particularly during the pre-construction and construction stages. These tools have the capability of being used to communicate post-construction residual hazards in digital form. However, yeah, the extent to which we can use these will be very much dependent on the end users having the appropriate resources, and those are financial resources, human resources, IT, hardware, software, competency, and that they will also have the processes to accept, store, utilize, manage and update the health and safety information. There is a lot in there. There's a lot of implication on resources to keep the information up to date. So I think this current misalignment between the design community, which is primarily major projects, and the end user maintenance community seems to be the principal significant challenge to be overcome if we're going to move to a GIS-based platform for health and safety files, and the ultimate goal to build a digital twin of the network with the significant hazards add to it. Next slide, please, which may well be yes, just the next steps. So yes, just to finish off, I've got a little bit of further consultation to do with David Olorenshaw and a couple of colleagues he's working with within National Highways, just to gain a full understanding of end user requirements and the consistency across the I suspect across the different areas. Different area teams are variously advanced or not on the use of GIS based tools. We need to map out in simple terms how the data is currently used and communicated with the OD community. As I mentioned earlier, there's a process map for hazard and risk management to be developed and produce a summary report with the findings and recommendations. So that, Doug, I think that's the last slide. So thank you. 2 minutes to spare.
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent. Well done, Mark.
Right, I will. I'll tee up the next present.
Questions? Okay. Has anybody got any questions before we close this meeting?
I'll just bring up the final slide, if that's okay. Which is back to Martin briefly. Hope you can see that.
I thought you were going to drop me, but
no, we'd never do that, Martin.
yeah. Okay. So health and safety shares. Sorry, safety shares that we've been doing. We've reviewed 3 and finalised 3. We've reviewed. We've dropped 1, which was to do with the low handrails and gantries, because there's already a standard out there that's looking at that. And there was quite a bit of discussion around raising shares again on subjects that have already been raised, and we've agreed to continue doing that. So it's similar to what you would get with the safety alert. So you may get repeat safety shares coming through, but we'll link them back to existing ones that have already been identified. But those are potential areas where designers need to be focusing on, because you're getting repeated incidents coming through. There are more shares coming through, and you know, after doing that designing for maintenance presentation earlier, there's quite a few bits and pieces in there that I think should be coming through on the safety share side as well. But yeah, that's where we are at the moment. There's still a good group there, but if anyone's interested in getting involved, then please put your name down and we'll include you in.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
Okie doke. Thank you very much for your participation. Last call for any questions, and Doug will send out some minutes together with the copies of the presentations. If we don't speak to you again before the end of this new year, have a good Christmas if you celebrate Christmas, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year at our 34th meeting. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Yep, thank you all.
Thanks all.
Cheers all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye now.